perfect, skilled, superior. These were words that described Gakushu Asano. Well, at least Gakushu described himself that way. The strawberry blonde sat on a sofa across the auburn-haired girl. He was quietly reading Romeo and Juliet to jog his memory, trying to dismiss the fact that his fiancée was there. Yumiko, on the opposite sofa, was doing homework on her laptop. Both kept glancing at the clock. However, there were still 45 minutes until either of them could leave. It wasn't that he hated her, he just preferred to be alone and away from his fiancée. Again, he did not hate her, he just thought that she didn't have much of a personality. She agreed to everything he said with no protest at all. She rarely spoke to him. She was overly submissive toward him. He didn't exactly mind. He was not interested in her one bit. As the silence continued, Gakushu's reading was left uninterrupted. He held the book with his left hand and had his wrist upturned. He did a double take when tiny writing appeared on his wrist. To buy tomatoes, Clorox, toilet, and refills, pads, tampons, beef stock, 0.5 pencil lead, makeup wipes, AA batteries, saran wrap, Tide Pods, Oreos, carrots, masking tape, vinegar, baking soda. Gakushu deadpanned as he saw the list continue in no organization whatsoever. Why is she writing on her arm? Did she forget that whatever she writes on herself I get as well? He thought back to the other day when she had stopped by with her art teacher. His heart skipped a beat when he remembered the stare that they had shared. He shook his head, refusing to admit that he secretly enjoyed that moment. More importantly, he was wearing short sleeves, so there was a possibility that Yumiko could see the writing on his arm. He abruptly stood up and went to his room. Please excuse me for one moment. Oh, okay. As he walked off, a melancholy smile sewed its way onto Yumiko's lips. She was truly trying her best to make things work between the two of them, even if neither of them wanted to be together in the first place. Gakushu shut the door to his room and grabbed the nearest marker. Wyatt tapped the tip of her pen on her chin as she continued to think about what to buy. She was hanging out at Kyo's house to help her with her makeup for an event that her mother wanted her to go to. Said girl was in the shower right now, so Wyatt took the moment to begin her grocery list. She couldn't find any paper, but she did find a stray pen. At that moment, she had forgotten that whatever words she wrote on herself, her soulmate would get too. Her eyes widened when she saw the words from under her list. Did you forget that I can see what you're writing? Wyatt froze and wrote back, What the fuck? She watched as more words were written into her arm. I thought I asked you to refrain from writing profanities on me. If you're going to write a list on me, then at least organize it and write it properly. Your handwriting is terrible. Also, 0.7 lead is far superior. Wyatt furrowed her eyebrows. It had been so long since she had actually written on herself, so she had forgotten that writing words on her body would appear on Gakushu as well. She wrote back, I forgot this was a part of the stupid soulmate package. Also, I didn't ask for your opinion on pencil lead. Gakushu clicked his tongue and wrote back, Don't you have paper around so that you can wash this off? Wyatt shrugged. I do not. Gakushu rolled his eyes. Could you at least erase pads and tampons? I have a guest over and it would be very hard to explain that. Wyatt snickered. In that case, I don't think I will. President Asano, do you prefer pads or tampons? Gakushu scowled. This is not funny. Please wash off your arm and I'll wash off mine. Wyatt rolled her eyes. Fine, just give me a second. She watched all of Gakushu's previous writings fade away. That was the most civil conversation I've ever seen you had with Asano, and you weren't even talking. Kyo deadpanned behind her. I didn't notice you were out, Wyatt stated as she stood up and walked to Kyo's bathroom. Wait, do you have any paper? Kyo tossed her notepad. Wyatt copied the list onto the paper and began to scrub the writing off completely. She clicked her pen once more and wrote, Happy now? Gakushu scowled. Why would you write again if you just washed everything else off? Wine scribbled onto her arm. I wanted to make sure my dearest soulmate was happy. Gakushu scoffed. Stop writing to me. Wine irked. Who said I wanted to write to you in the first place? Gakushu wrote with vexation. Just stop. Wine breathed a sigh of irritation and washed off her writing. Soon, Gakushu's writing was off her arm as well. The bell rang, and everyone was dismissed from their classes. This started both Wine and Gakushu's free period. Wine passed by a fellow student as she carried her paint tubes in a clear pencil case to the auditorium. Once again, she crossed the concrete courtyard. Students began to file into the building, rushing toward their next classes. Wine was in no rush, considering that it was her free period. As someone briskly walked past her shoulder shoved against someone else's. She looked over her shoulder and called out, "Watch it!" The person she'd bumped into was a girl with dark brown hair. She was standing beside a girl with black hair. Ellen? Wine paused when she recognized who they were. They were her former friends, before she transferred to 3E. The dark brown-haired girl was named Suzu Abenow. The black-haired girl was named Aya Ishimoto. Suzu had a fake grin on her face. Wow, it's been so long. 3 years since we last spoke, wasn't it? Aya smiled. How have you been? I see you two are still as plastic as ever. Wine hummed, turning around to continue her walk. Whatever, I don't have time to waste on either of you. Aya and Suzu glanced at each other. Suddenly, Wine unexpectedly felt the back of her knees get kicked in, hard. This made her legs fold and she fell to the ground, roughly, slightly scraping her knee on the concrete. She dropped her brushes and paints and glared at the two girls. Are you asking for a fight? You may be one of the smartest second years in the school, but that doesn't make you better than us. Suzu hissed at her, standing on her left. She stiffened at the sight of bloodlust in her eye-colored eyes. Her smirk faltered slightly and tensed a tad bit. Wyan made the mistake to forget that Aya was there as well. The black-haired girl stood on her right, reached down and pulled out a fistful of hair. Wyan hissed as she continued to pretend to be the weaker one. She was waiting for a chance to scare them off. Favorite color, really? Aya cackled at her hair. Someone's looking for attention. Wow, this paint looks really expensive. Suzu awed as she picked up the clear pencil case with paints in them. I'm surprised someone like you could afford them. Wyan's heart dropped, but her eyes widened at Suzu's foot stomping on the tubes of paint. Blues, yellows, and purples splattered onto the concrete. Suzu continued to bring her foot down upon her paint set, creating a colorful splatter on the concrete. She had bought them 5 months ago, but she had saved up so much money just to afford them. She felt her blood rush through her veins as she began to see red. They're gonna die. Wyan's chest began to heave up and down as she grabbed Aya's wrist that held her hair. She tightened her grip around her wrist. The black-haired girl yelped as her wrist began to hurt. Wyan stood up, still squeezing Aya's wrist. She was about to go absolutely ballistic and use everything she could remember from what Kurasama had taught 3E until a voice echoed through the courtyard. Fighting, are we? A strawberry blonde boy had his arm crossed and his eyebrows furrowed. Well, actually, it looks to me like this is bullying. Wyan kept heaving breaths, but her grip loosened slightly. Her eyes darted to her soulmate, but her glare didn't cease. President Asano, Aya stuttered. Suzu gulped. Gakushu approached the 3 girls. But we were just putting a 3E student in her place, Suzu justified. We no longer go by that system. Gakushu's glare was dark and almost terrifying. The student you are bullying just so happens to be one of the top scorers at this school. She is also, arguably, the school's best artist. Wyan's grip loosened and dropped her hand to her side at the sound of Gakushu calling her that. He hadn't given her a single glance. Aya and Suzu were quiet and sweating from the boy that loomed over them. I can have you both in detention for weeks, better yet suspended if need be, Gakushu continued. The sight of two students treating another student this way is revolting, and both of you should be ashamed. I'll be discussing this with the disciplinary committee. I'll see to it that you both get a proper punishment for this. They should not have laid a hand on her in the first place. Gakushu looked to Wayan, making her go stiff and her eyebrows furrow. She visibly relaxed when she saw his gaze soften slightly. Gakushu's eyes glanced to Wayan's scraped knees and the crushed paint on the ground. Her scrapes weren't severe and they weren't bleeding much, so they'd heal on their own. However, he believed it would be better to clean them for good measure. He would have been lying if he said that he didn't feel bad. He was only passing by when he had seen Suzu stomp on Wayan's paints, but he felt it when her heart dropped. Maybe that was the reason he was so mad. He picked up her brushes and the paints that were fully intact. There were 24 tubes in total. 10 of them were completely destroyed. 4 were only partially ruined, but still had salvageable paint in them. The last 10 were perfectly fine. He whipped his head to Suzu and Aya. Both of you get a mop and clean this up. If you don't, your punishment will be severely worse. After that, I believe you are both late for class. Yes, sir. The two scrambled back into the building with tears in their eyes. You. Wayan shamefully looked away and played with her hair for comfort. Gakushu directed a glance in her direction. Come with me. Gakushu turned his back to her. As he began to walk off, Wayan looked down to see the colorful mess of acrylic paint on the concrete. They're gonna have a hard time getting all of that off. Her eyes were downcast and sad as she followed Gakushu into the building. She would wince at the feeling of her scraped knees. Gakushu led the way to the infirmary. Why did you take me here? Wayan furrowed her eyebrows. Your knees, Gakushu pointed out. Wayan looked down to her knees. It's not that bad. Don't be stubborn. Gakushu sighed. I'll help you clean them up. I don't need your help. Wayan glared and sat on a cot. Just hand me the alcohol and some bandages. I just said don't be stubborn. Gakushu repeated as he poured alcohol onto a cotton ball held by tweezers. He sat a far distance beside her and dodged as she tried to snatch at it. Wayan rolled her eyes, but ended up complying in the end. She brought her legs up onto the cot. She was grateful that she was wearing shorts underneath her skirt. Why do you want to help me? Wayan scowled. I've helped you before, haven't I? Gakushu pointed out. I gave you a ride home that one time. That's different. Wayan objected. I asked you for help. Gakushu paused at that. Why are you voluntarily helping me? That was a noteworthy question. For some reason, he was helping her out of the goodness of his heart. He wasn't being manipulative, nor did he have any underlying intentions. He genuinely wanted to help her. For once in his life, Gakushu didn't know an answer to a question. Instead, he asked, Why did you clap for me the other day? Wayan tensed. That was also a thought-provoking question. Just like Gakushu, she didn't know how to answer that question either. Because I wanted to. She mumbled and relaxed her shoulders. That's the answer to your question, Gakushu replied. Unlike you, Asano, she stared with a glare. I know the fine line between manipulation and genuine respect. I'm not trying to control you. Gakushu scowled at her. Wayan became stiff once more as he looked her in the eyes. And even if I was, I still respect you as an academic rival. He went on, I'm very aware of your intelligence. Wayan was silenced by that. She clicked her tongue and whipped her head to the side. Whatever. Gakushu rolled his eyes as he continued to treat her wounds. Wayan pulled a lock of her hair from behind her ear and played with the ends. She felt awkward in the current situation. In any case, regarding the English assignment, Gakushu added, I'd much rather work with you than someone else. Wayan snorted. That is not what I would expect to hear come from your mouth, but okay. Would you like me to continue so I can proceed to surprise you? No, thank you. Wine curtly replied. I observed your portrait of the school's founder. Gakushu ignored her reply. I have to say, I was impressed. Wine returned his sarcastic smile from earlier. Thanks. I'm being honest. He quietly chuckled. It's hard to believe you were colorblind 3 years ago. Wine pierced her lips. I suppose I have you to thank for that. I could have handled it on my own. Wine trailed off, looking to the paint tubes that Gakushu had set aside. It looked to me like you were about to murder them, Gakushu stated as he pressed the cotton ball onto her left wound. She winced and grit her teeth. That might have been for the best. What was your relationship with them? Why do you want to know? Gakushu gave her an exasperated look, making her sigh. They were former friends of mine, from second year in junior high. Wayne explained. When I got sent down to E, they completely switched on me. Gakushu stated, looks like they still think of you that way. Yeah, Wayne sighed. But oh well, they were pretty toxic anyway. Gakushu opted not to continue with the topic. It went quiet between the two. Wyan's eyes kept glancing to her paint as Gakushu applied a bandage on her left knee. He poured alcohol on another cotton ball and got to work on her right knee. I'm sorry about your paint, Gakushu stated with a hushed voice. Wyan cocked an eyebrow. Why are you apologizing to me for? You weren't the one who messed them up. How much were they? Gakushu questioned. A little on the expensive side? Wyan frowned. There was another awkward silence. Does fate still come to bother you? Wyan asked quietly. Yes, Gakushu grimaced. At least once a day. Really? Wyan chuckled. Unfortunately, yes. Gakushu sighed. You? I dunno. Wyan shrugged. Fate hasn't really appeared in my reflection in about a week. Don't jinx it. He tiredly replied and placed a bandage on her other knee. He leaned back. Are you hurt anywhere else? Wyan was taken aback by his soft tone. She observed as his violet eyes looked at her with concern, his strawberry blonde hair that framed his face perfectly and looked so soft to just run her fingers through. Why is he so pretty? No. She looked away, rolling her eyes, ignoring the fact that she thought he was pretty for a moment there. A frustrated British accent fussed from their reflection into the mirror on the counter. Stop checking each other out and just kiss already. Both ignored Fate's protest and just continued to look away from each other. Ugh. Fate wanted to pull their hair out. Gakushu abruptly stood, still ignoring Fate. You still have to meet with the drama club, don't you? Oh, shit. Wyan cursed and stood up. Yeah, I forgot. She picked up what was left of her paint and paintbrushes. Before she left the room, she turned around and looked him in the eyes. Thank you, Asano. Badum, badum, badum. Gakushu froze and felt that familiar feeling of butterflies in his stomach. It was similar to when she had said good night to him. Wyan hurried out of the door, but Gakushu was still stunned. When he registered what had happened, he sheepishly scratched his cheek with his pointer finger. At least she has manners. Fate smiled softly, but decided not to verbally comment on their interaction. It was slow between the two soulmates. They were very stubborn when it came to admitting that they were even soulmates, but Fate knew this was progress. Thank you for listening. This was really long, so I'm gonna have to go edit that right now. But anyways, have an amazing morning, have an amazing evening, have an amazing afternoon whenever you're listening to this, and I will see you guys when I see you guys. Thank you for tuning in. Goodbye, everyone!